Hey, everybody. I am so excited about today's podcast of FranFaith. Today, I am with my good friend and the CEO and co-founder of Franchise Fastlane, Carey Gille. So, Carey, welcome to the FranFaith podcast.
God, it's so great to be here. I've been looking forward to this one. So thank you.
Y-
Thanks for having me. And you're
Yeah,
right.
well,
So co-founder, but I will tell you just now transitioning to the board. You might have seen that announcement. It's hot off the press. So I'm excited about that transition as well. Still very involved, but moved over from the CEO role to the board.
yeah, well, that's great. Well, congratulations on that. I know you've had an amazing, successful career, and you're going to
Thank you.
continue in franchising and do just incredible things. In fact, we're going to get into some of the stuff in your background and get into that kind of how you built Franchise Fastlane. We're so excited to hear a lot about that. I know it was hard. You are such a busy lady that it was hard to even schedule together with you. And so I happened to be on a quick vacation in the Virgin Islands, and so I'm sitting here
We trade
enjoying
places. Maybe we should
St. Thomas today.
do
Are you?
Nebraska and
Well,
all.
you're. It's not that cold in Nebraska right now, is it, or is it?
It's not that bad. It's
Yeah.
actually in the 40s today, but last week was single digits, but
It's
that's,
the
yeah,
40s.
yeah,
Okay. All right. Good. It's
yeah,
better than my home
not too
state of
bad.
Michigan, which was in the teens this week.
Yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, here we are. It's so good to be able to talk to you.
You
I
too.
I would love to kind of go back and find out what kind of
Yeah.
background did you have that prepared you for Franchise Fastlane. I think you started it in 2017, if I'm not
Correct.
right. And we had talked to you real early on with one of the early brands when you guys just had a few
Yeah.
brands. I remember meeting and getting together in Florida
Yeah.
there. But you've had such an amazing run. And what led up to this? What was
Yeah.
the background?
Absolutely. Good memory. It was. It was January 1st of 2017. We started it with the new year. And you're right. My background was maybe a little different than the typical professional. I just knew I was, first of all, I'm a pastor's daughter. So I was raised in a home where the 9 to 5 grind was not typical. My parents lived their passion of building a church. My dad founded a church when I was 2 years old in a living room, in his parents' living room with 5 people. And that church, he's retired now, but he was there for 50 years. That church is still thriving in Lincoln, Nebraska, an hour down the road here from Omaha, and is one of the largest churches in Lincoln, 700 or so they run every Sunday. So I was raised in a home where my parents didn't have a job. They had a calling, they had a mission, and there was no log in and then or clock in and then clock out, or it was nothing like that. I mean, if somebody called and they were in the hospital, as you can imagine, as a pastor, my dad was there. He was part of it. So that's what I saw being raised, was this passion for what I do and living out a mission and a calling. And I didn't have a desire to go into ministry. We'll talk about that and how I was raised when we get to the faith portion of the
Well,
session.
I could tell you thought about it. I could
Of
see
course
it
I
the
did.
way
Of
you
course I
said
did. When
that.
you're raised, there's a little pressure there. Of course I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that desire. I did have a desire to live a mission and a vision and a dream. I did. I did have a desire to impact people and communities and bring positive influence. And I never even thought, even though I was valedictorian and I worked really hard to graduate with, highest regard and marks and all of those things, I never even thought about corporate America. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. At the time, the booming industry was technology. This is the 90s, right? And it was all technology. And it was late 99, about 2000 when I graduated college. And so it was, that was the dot-com boom. And so I thought I need to go into tech and figure out how I'm going to make my mark here. And I partnered with a couple guys, older, wiser than myself. They'd been in their career for a few years. And we found an accountant who had written a book, just a book, on the fair market value of the items that people give to charity. And the premise of the business was, if you knew the actual fair market value of the items that you donate, your deduction could be greater than what you're taking today, and you could be motivated to help those less fortunate. So your generosity would help those. So there's a win there, but there's also a win for you in the form of a tax break that you don't even know you're not taking advantage of today. We licensed the rights to write the software. And this is when software, Todd, was burned to a disk and sold in a box in Best Buy.
Okay.
So we licensed, there was no cloud other than the clouds in the sky, right? We licensed the rights to write the software for this solution. We called it It's Deductible. And we started, we had no budget, no office. We officed out of his living room one day, my living room the next day, McDonald's, Starbucks, whatever we could find. But we knew we were onto something because we had no marketing budget. Here's what I did. I wrote a press release and I started sending it to local media around us. This was Omaha, Nebraska. So Kansas City, I think we went as far as Chicago, St. Louis. And I couldn't believe it, but the press picked it up. They liked the story. Again, it was tax time. So they thought,
Well, and you're helping people. I mean, making donations and
right.
deductibility, you're helping on all
It was
sides.
absolutely a feel-good
Yeah.
story for real, because it was about helping others, but also getting the tax break that you're due. And people didn't know how to do it. They just took that minimum that they needed without requiring further documentation for their taxes. And that's what most people did. So I came in and talked about, here's what you should do. You should be motivated to give. And then here's how you get the deduction that you need. All of a sudden, local media were inviting me onto the evening news, and I started traveling. And there's an evening I'm never going to forget. And I was walking out of the St. Louis Evening News, and it was my college roommate. We're still very, very close. She called me and said, Carey, you need to get a Wall Street Journal. I said, a Wall Street Journal? Why? You're on the front page. And I had sent that press release to the
Wow.
Wall Street Journal, thinking they would throw it away. Of course, Todd, I thought they would just throw it away. And without even warning us, calling the company anything, they ran it on the printed Wall Street Journal right above the fold front page. And what's ironic about this is all of a sudden I'm a tax expert overnight. And I had filed taxes independent of my parents one time. Like, I spent the next 2 years in New York City. CNN headline news, MSNBC, CNN, US News and World Report. I mean, it was a national tax story. And I remember saying to my partners, we're getting national media attention. We better hire a spokesperson. Who's going to be our spokesperson? And they looked at me and said, Carey, that's you. Like, that's you. And I just felt so empowered that they believed in me. And that was probably my first learning on mindset, that whole whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. They believed in me. I just needed to believe in myself. And so spent the next couple of years doing that. About that time, Todd, H&R Block called us and they said they had tax cut. And they said, we would like to link tax cut to your solution. The cloud was just emerging. Everybody was starting to move their tax solutions to the cloud by now. And they were like, we would like to link our solutions together. We got excited about that because that would mean exposure to millions of people who
Yeah,
filed.
right.
We start that conversation and you won't believe what happens. Scott Cook, TurboTax, Intuit calls and say, don't partner with them. We're just going to buy you. So Tax Cut, TurboTax were fierce competitors at the time. One is H&R Block, one is Intuit, which Quicken QuickBooks out of California. And at 25, I sell my first company and I land in corporate America. It was corporate whiplash because you go from, no budget, no tools, no team, all of that to all of a sudden you're a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
And I agreed to stay. I was young. I didn't know the difference, didn't know whether to even negotiate that, agreed to stay for 5 years. I built the estimated tax solution that they still have today. I had an apartment in La Jolla. I just flew back and forth, Nebraska, California, Nebraska, San Diego. And I learned
Well, there are worse spots than La Jolla.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Gorgeous.
It was, and I got to, work directly with Scott Cook, who's a corporate icon. He taught me voice of the customer. He taught me net promoter. It was really the beginning of what I would say my understanding of story brand. And I hadn't even read that book yet, but it was the beginning of me starting to get that. And so I stay in corporate America for 5 years. I learn a lot, but I'm anxious to get back into my own entrepreneurial journey. I'm an entrepreneur. And I built Sojourn during that time, which is another company. I don't know if you remember when you were traveling, the boarding pass, you would print your boarding pass before it was on your phone, and there would be ads below your boarding pass. That was Sojourn. We partnered with the airlines, and Sojourn was just acquired actually a month ago. And I was still sitting on that board. So that was kind of a startup that started during that time. And now, of course, what they do is they drop cookies and sell travel data. So it's a little different in the world of the cloud and mobile boarding pass. But I wanted to get back to Omaha. My first son was born. He was going back and forth to California with me, but that wasn't going to work long. He was, starting preschool. The nanny was tucking him in a lot. I wanted to be home. And I heard about a concept there. There was a franchise and they had 5 locations in Omaha, but they were starting to franchise nationwide. And it was in health and fitness. And Todd, I love health and fitness. It's how I started this morning. It's how I start every day. It keeps your mind and your body healthy together, right? And so I called him and I said, hey, I'm looking to move back. I'm listening and hearing about your company. It sounds like it's young, it's emerging, it's in an industry that I love. And he said, yeah, we're in franchising. Let's get lunch. And I I sat down with him at lunch, Todd, and I said, I don't know franchising. I need to be honest with you. I mean, at the time, I didn't know an FDD from an ABC, right? I had no idea. But the concept intrigued me. And so I went on and I became CDO of that business, and we grew it. We set a goal of 22 locations. We sold 200 and some locations over the next
Wow.
14 months. I bought 3 of my own. My husband ran those while I ran development for Complete Nutrition. And they had to pause development. They ended up selling to private equity a couple years later. And I fell in love, Todd. I fell in love with franchising. I just did. And I think it was because of those 2 extremes I just told you about. My favorite definition in Webster's dictionary is that of vision, which is a clear and compelling picture of a desired future. That's what vision is, a clear and compelling picture of a desired future. And I feel like most people get one or the other of those. They either get the clear and compelling picture, which is corporate America. It's clear, it's compelling. I know what I'm going to do from day to day. I'm going to get that 3% raise. I'm going to get 1 additional day of PTO every year. You're right. And they know what it looks like. Or they get that desired future, to time with their family, impact, community, the opportunity to be your own boss, but you don't often get both. But that's what vision is. And I found that in franchising. It was both.
That's a great definition of vision being the combination of the two.
Of the two.
Yeah.
I was like, vision is franchising. This is amazing. Because doing that first story I told you, officing out of McDonald's in people's homes and having no budget, that's hard. Yeah. And not everybody wants to do that. And I get it. But franchising brings you an opportunity to do both.
Right. Well, that's it's interesting because having kind of grown up in faith, and then we joked about you considering ministry, but then doing kind of the software company that was helping people. So you're still kind of helping people. Then as you're growing the franchise, you saw that vision. And, the Bible says that the Lord knows the desires of our hearts. A lot of times he placed those desires there. And so you're out helping folks. And I think we do help people get into business for themselves and franchising. And it is one of the very big blessings that I think that is in our business. So wow, what an amazing journey. So you and your husband bought these Complete Nutritions. You owned several yourself, and then you grew the system to did you say 220 or something like that?
Yep, about 220.
And then there was an exit then.
Yep, they
okay.
sold.
So that's where you learned on the development side to really build a system and sell so many, but also have a big vested stake, as a franchisee in there. So I don't think I knew that you were a franchisee as part of that story too.
Yes.
So pretty awesome.
And still am today. You know that. I still am today.
I do know you and your husband have some other businesses.
Not Complete Nutrition, but still.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
I very much believe in franchising. But
yeah. Okay, how exciting.
So how does this bring to Fastlane? So they sell to private equity. I have my 3rd son and I'm home, but I'm anxious to get back into it. Todd, you miss it when you're gone. Yeah. And I start writing this business plan for what if brands could outsource their sales? Because it's so hard for them to take this on while they're building the business. Yeah. Right? They're trying to do so much. And what if they could keep their eyes on the business and their franchisees and helping their franchisees thrive and not worry about where their next franchisee is going to come from? That could be outsourced. So I start working on a business plan, and I call Ryan Zink, who was who I worked for at Complete Nutrition. And I said, I have this business idea. Can I just bounce it off you? Let's just share some ideas. I said, absolutely. So we met. I start pitching this idea to him. I had a website, I had a business plan, and he starts laughing. And I thought, wow, I thought it was a good idea. You're laughing at me. And Todd, he was laughing because he was working on the same thing. And it just became very clear to us as already coworkers and friends that we were either going to partner or we were going to compete. And I certainly didn't want to compete with Ryan Zink. I don't think he wanted to compete with me. We just decided to partner. That was January of 2017, started Fastlane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, and just to be clear too, for folks that maybe are newer to franchising or don't understand, or maybe companies sell directly on their own with their franchises, but there have been broker networks out there for many, many years that are outsourced broker networks that will bring leads into the franchisor. Then there's a lot of internal folks that are internal staff that might guide candidates at a franchise company. But the franchise sales organizations were kind of a little bit of a new and novel animal
It was.
to be able to have something like a franchise fast lane that could represent you out in the marketplace and sell multiple brands.
Yep.
So maybe take us a little bit through the start of that, and then how many brands were you able to
Sure.
handle initially, and then what did that look like?
Todd, to help you clarify the point you were just making, I think a good analogy is selling a home. If you are selling your home, it's for sale by owner. That's these brands that keep development in house, and some of them have incredible success. My friend over at Floor Coverings International, I mean, look at that success story. They've kept it in house. They've had incredible success, but it was for sale by owner. Now, there was oftentimes still an agent bringing the buyer, and in that example you just gave, that would be the consultant. The consultant brings the buyer, right? In the case of an FSO, you have a seller's agent and a buyer's agent. That's what you have. So I represent the brand. I would call myself as the buyer, the seller's agent, right? And then somebody else still brings the buyer. So you're right. It's just a situation of whether or not there's two agents or one in helping that franchisee find their franchisor home. So I think that the home buying is a good analogy. Yeah. So we start Franchise Fastlane in January of 2017. And I think people looked at us like we were crazy. You're right. There were a couple other FSOs, which, by the way, in the FSO competitive space, we're all friends. We really enjoy one another and learn from one another. And I had some of them calling me going, Carey, what are you doing? Because we very gruelly quit. We very quickly grew, not gruelly quick. We very quickly grew from very few employees to 40 employees. And it was because we thought, let's build something a little different where people sit within their own strength. And typically at the time, the FSOs that were out there were highly regarded individuals, but they did it all, soup to nuts, right? They took the lead, they held every phone call, they called the no-shows, they did the territory checks, they did everything. Whereas we came in and did something very different where we built a support team. We built a team that had a passion for selling franchisees. We had a back-end ops team. We built a technology system so consultants could track how their potential buyer was advancing through our process. We built a very clearly outlined process. We automated it all on a CRM. I mean, it was just so different, Todd, from anything out there. And we signed our first few brands. Maybe we're at 4 brands within the first 5 months. And we were so excited, 4 brands. And now I'm looking at you, and we've absolutely repped somewhere between 80 and 90 brands. And we have 40 in the fast lane today. Not necessarily in the fast lane. We have a second program now for brands that want to grow a little slower and keep their dev in-house, but sit on our back office infrastructure called Carpool. But between those two programs, there's 40 brands in the fast lane today. So, but those first days were exciting. And you can imagine my role was everything, just like yours would be for a startup, right? It was strategic leadership, but it was also hosting an intro call for one of our new brands with a prospective franchisee who wanted to look at the fit there.
And just incredible the systems that you were able to build. Of course, you could see different sales and processes for multiple companies. So you'd learn the companies quick, but the systems that you were able to put in place that brought them into high technology much more quickly than they ever would have otherwise, and then have that be shared across the platforms was brilliant. I mean, brilliant.
Really was fun. I mean, those early days are fun too, because you're still creating your mission, your vision, your core values. DNA is coming together. And they're just fun days. You're discovering.
Yeah, right. So just a couple of fast or fun questions maybe. So do you remember, do you have like a franchisee that you sold that has had, incredible smashing success or something? Greg Flynn wasn't one of your early franchisees, was he?
No. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great if I could say it was Greg Flynn? I'll take credit for him. One of my
I'm sure you have many, but I just wonder, do you have one that stands out in your mind, or a few that stand out?
Jimmy O'Lang is one of my favorites, and I'll tell you a story. So, and this one goes back to Faith, so that's kind of fun. So the brothers that just do gutters. I had a brand call me, and they were out of New York. And first of all, even how the brand was founded is an incredible story. A teacher who thought he wanted to stay in teaching found that he just couldn't make ends meet after the third child was born. He's got to figure out, in the summers, he's hanging gutters. He decides it's an industry he can get in, and he can offer something that's differentiated, even disrupted, a mom and pop's industry. And he builds brothers that just do gutters. By the time they call me, they have 30 locations already open. They have a call center, they have support, they have infrastructure, they have financial strength, and I'm excited about this brand. two brothers running the business. So Ryan, and both Christians. Ryan Parsons is on a missions trip in Kenya, and he starts sharing his story. And one of the younger kids, like a teenager, says, I want to get involved. Can I work for you? His name was Jimmy Olang. And Ryan said, yes, if you want to start working on your visa and we'll start on the process, you could come over to the US and yes, you could work for us. You could hang gutters for brothers that just do gutters. And it took 10 years. He worked on this process for 10 years. And he finally comes over now as a young man. And when Ryan tells the story, it just cracks me up because he says that he showed up the very first day to hang gutters in his flip-flops and sandals and all that. He hangs gutters and works for corporate America, puts himself through college, finds a wife. I mean, just an amazing story anyway. And then we get to work with him because he wants to become a franchisee. And the brothers that just do gutters, they're thrilled to turn him into a franchisee. He's now a multi-unit owner for brothers that just do gutters. His AUVs are strong. I mean, it's just one of those success stories.
What an incredible story.
Right, that starts on a mission.
And so right? he's here now, multi-unit owner, family, built a life, built a life around that.
Yeah, and, that's so cool.
That is so cool.
It's just so cool. I know.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, it's just so cool. I mean, and another one that's maybe not so fun, but it's meaningful. And this was on my podcast when I was interviewing some of the franchisees that we brought in. This is a 5-star franchisee, and I mean, listen to this story. It's a couple, and they both had their corporate jobs, but they were always interested in franchising. But when you get right to the edge of your comfort zone, oftentimes that's when you back up. They say life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. In the middle of the night, one night, 2:00 in the morning, their kid had left for college. He was a freshman in college in a fraternity, and they get a call at 2:00 in the morning that he had been shot in the head. There'd been an accident, and he'd been shot in the head. I mean, Todd, they're telling me this over a podcast, and I have 3 sons, as you know. I just can't even imagine that phone call. And they drive all night because it was the quickest way to get to them instead of waiting for a flight the next day. They told me, Carey, we didn't know if we were driving to see our son ever even alive again. He was rushed.
Can't imagine.
Air flighted, So they get to the hospital. The stories are amazing when you hear of his recovery. But he went from a freshman in college and I believe a finance major, if I'm remembering right, to that was probably never going to be his future, his career. He did recover, but he had to learn to speak, to walk, all of his motor skills, everything. They had to start over. And so what they decided to do was go into franchising, to think about his future and how they could work together. And they bought a 5-star franchise, and dad quit his corporate job and his son joined him. And that is still what they do today. Now they're multi-unit owners, and his son is back. And it's amazing when you see the pictures of him, because other than a little bit of motion in one arm, he is completely healed. And he and his dad run this business together. He obviously didn't return to college. He had success through franchising. And it's just one of those meaningful stories that you just go, look at how franchising was the solution for this family.
Sure. What a blessing.
A horrific event. And it became part of their solution on top of their family bond, on top of the medical experts. But franchising became their future.
Wow.
Perspective. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and I bet you have just hundreds more.
I know, I could go on and on. It's crazy.
In fact, I asked you, how many units do you think you've placed then, all told? Have you ever tracked that?
Yeah, we are right at 10,000, just a little over 10,000 territories. Yep. Not that many franchisees, because we average somewhere between a 2 and a 3 pack per franchise agreement.
Okay.
We have to divide that by 7 or something, but 10,000 territories, communities impacted. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. I honestly think the last time I asked you that, you estimated it was over 8,000. So, it was that long ago that I asked that now you're at 10 or you were estimating low, which probably both make sense, but that's wild. How about biggest struggle, biggest obstacle? I mean, what did you have to get past?
Well, on the FSO side, there really were a few things. There weren't many women. There were a lot of women on the consultant side and a lot of women in franchising. But on the FSO side, I felt like I was blazing a trail, not just as a director, but as a leader within an FSO. But now you don't see that. If you look at the FSO community today, it's probably equal women. It definitely is in the fast lane. And I see
Yeah.
that at Rep'em and some of the other reputable FSOs, lots of women. But that felt like a challenge up front. Disappointment. I mean, you look back, and Todd, I'm sure you feel this too. I worked so hard to be at my kids' big events.
Yeah.
My husband and I made that very difficult decision of who's going to do what in these young years of our kids, and he stayed home with my boys, which is incredible. And we have a blended family as well, so we have a big family. And he
Yeah.
stayed home, and so they were taken care of, and they had a parent there. But there's some day to day that I look back at now and go, oh, I wish, he called me after the doctor's appointments and said he grew an inch and a half and put me on FaceTime, right? There's some moments that just looking back, I'm going, I'll never have them back. I only have one left in the home now.
Yeah.
And that's hard, Todd. Like
No, I understand that. And Christy and I both had struggled with that, and our first
yeah,
spouses both, and it just
yeah,
becomes a little bit of a struggle in life. And
yeah.
I appreciate your transparency. I remember I was out of town at a convention, and my son had emergency
Oh,
appendicitis, and then had to have surgery, and I couldn't be there, and there was no way to get a flight home, and
right.
so my wife had taken care of everything, and you just it's hard. I mean, it's
It's hard.
so I get that. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of family, um, so I know you and Chris now. You have a incredible husband,
Yes.
and Chris and you have bought new
Yep.
businesses now today. Is that right? And
Yes.
so
So,
tell us a little bit
yeah,
about your kids and your family and what's going on in your life and world today.
I would love to do that. Yeah, Chris and I have been married. Well, New Year's Day will be 17 years. So clearly, New Year's Day is a big day for me. It's when I start businesses. It's when
That's right. Your anniversary. Exactly.
New Year's Day will be 17 years that we have been happily married, and he's such a blessing in my life.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I wouldn't, none of, I wouldn't have wanted to do it without him, and I wouldn't be here without him. He's just been
Yeah.
a big part of the success story. And you're right. So he was willing to stay. He was president of a technology company. I was starting Fastlane. We were both traveling, and we had to have that dinner of, whoa, something's got to give. Something's got to give. And while you're willing, Todd, to outsource your house cleaning, somebody to mow the lawn, those sorts of things, outsourcing raising the kids is a different decision. And it certainly help is one thing. And we always had that, especially in the summers and all of that. But we just felt like we needed a parent who could really plug in. And thank goodness he was just so willing to do that. He said, you're working for us. I'm working for corporate America.
Yeah.
I think this is the right decision. And so we made that decision, and he was home. After Fastlane sold to private equity in 2022. And by then the kids are getting older. They're driving themselves around. There's only one younger one left. And he says, okay, come on, Carey. I said, I hear you, let's go. And so he started a couple businesses pretty much at the same time. The one was a franchise, and it's Everline. Incredible John Evans out of Canada. He calls me and says, Carey, I'd like to get into the fast lane. We only take 5% of the brands that apply. I look at the business and I say, John, I'm very interested, but you don't have any US locations. He had 27 Canadian locations. It's parking lot maintenance. So they fill the potholes and they repaint the lines on concrete and blacktop and parking lots. And so it's obviously a needed business. It's a recurring revenue because you put these businesses on quarterly contracts. It's a very interesting concept, but he only had Canadian locations. Now, what you and I both know is if that can work in Canada, that's got snow on the ground all the time, surely it can work in the US.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But I thought, John, I need you to show me it works in the US before I take it to the consultants and tell them it's a good business. And so we talked for, over a year while he opened 2 US locations and just proved out the business. And the whole time I was saying to Chris, this is the one for us. I think this is ours. This is ours. But I'm going to watch it a little longer. Let's see. Let's get it going. But I always had to move fast because I'm not the only one in the fast lane that buys our own brands. We've got
Sure.
14 fast laners today that own our own brands.
In your same city, out of your corporate
Well,
headquarters?
no, because we probably have 40 employees in
Okay.
Omaha.
And you're virtual,
But
you're
we're
all over.
virtual. The rest of the
Yeah.
company is
Okay.
virtual. So
I got
the
you.
other half of the company is virtual. And so it's kind of everywhere. But I certainly have competition here because 50% of
Yeah.
Fastlane is here.
Yeah.
So sure enough, when we realized this was going to be a business we were going to represent, it didn't take us long. I called Chris and said, let's go. This is the one. So we bought into Everline. We own all of Nebraska for Everline. It's been an incredible business. You get all the McDonald's, all the Amazons. I mean, it's just, and my brother runs it. So it's a family business. And it's been a good one. Nothing about franchising is easy. It takes grit. It takes
Yeah.
work. So I'm not going to say it's
Yeah.
just been easy. There's nothing about that's been
Right.
easy.
But I
Um,
think once
but
you
it's
know
rewarding.
that, get that out of the way and do
Get that out
that.
of the way.
Grit
It's
and
not
work.
right. It's not business in a box. It's
That's
not
right.
that. It's not. So that's one. And then my husband has a sister who's been in memory care for the elderly for 20 some years. And she just has the most giving heart and she can do this. And I think there's very few who can work with memory care patients. That is a challenge. And she came to him and said, what do you think about this business? And so they bought a home, they renovated it, and they take care of memory care patients. And that was about the same time we started Everline. Now they're on their third home and they usually have a waiting list, Todd. I mean, it's just people want more for their parents.
I remember talking to Chris about that,
Yeah,
and such a great business.
it's a great
Again,
business.
you're helping people,
It's
and
so rewarding. Yeah.
he had such a wonderful model that now
Yeah.
that you said is not a franchise,
That was
right?
not a
You're
franchise.
just you're doing
Right.
that on your own,
Yep. Doing that on our own. You
and
buy the
so
home.
what are you got plans or something, or no?
Not
You take it
yet.
easy.
Not
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but yeah, no,
Not
I
yet.
think that's an
It
interesting
would be a
business.
great franchise. It's different
Yeah,
because you own the asset of the home too. So it's a little different than
yeah,
standard. It's not two men in a truck, right? It's different,
yeah.
but it's a unique model. And like you said, it's also just it's a lay your head on the pillow at night, feel really good about what you do model. I
Yeah,
mean,
and right,
we just
exactly.
have families tell us all the time, I feel good about my mom being here. And they do crafts together. They have dinner at the table. They watch the Husker games together. I mean,
Yeah,
it's community, but it's still a house. It's still a house
right,
that your parent
right.
is living in. Yeah.
Well, Carrie, so much success for both you and your husband, your family, and even overcoming some of the struggles and helping people. And it's just so great to hear your thoughts and your heart. We appreciate that. Be curious how you mentioned faith a couple times and
Yeah.
being brought up in faith. I mean, how has that played a role in your life and as you've worked things through? Talk to us maybe a little bit about your faith.
Yep, absolutely. Let me finish this about my family story, and then this will feed into my faith. I was raised very, very, very conservative. Even I would say legalism. I think that's the word we know as Christians. Those of us who were raised like that. And I love my parents, and they raised me in an environment of love. But it was very much, I feared God. I didn't know the love of Christ. I didn't know grace. I didn't know mercy. And even something like divorce, which I've been through and now happily married 17 years with a blended family, my own 3 sons, but also 4 bonus kids that I love tremendously.
Yeah.
There just wasn't acceptance and an environment for that to be okay. There was no room for sin and even forgiven sin and mistakes. There was no room for that. There was just, it was so black and white. I mean, I was raised in an environment, honestly, where I was in a dress every day, never even could wear pants, couldn't go to public theaters, couldn't go to movies, couldn't go to the public pool, no dancing, no drinking, like just if you can imagine, just so strict. And I thought, where do I go from here? Because there was also a very defined space for a woman in that environment. I was raised in a very conservative Baptist church, and women were not allowed to speak on stage or have a role of leadership unless it was over other women, right? So, and here I was coming up through to my career going, I want to be a leader. I want to build. And so the conflict in my mind of, but I'm a woman, I'm not supposed to lead. I'm supposed to marry and help my husband lead, and contrast that with, but I want to do it.
Yeah, right.
I had to find my own faith. And that's the right way to say it. And I would say all 3 of us did. I was the oldest, and then I have a sister and a brother. And we all 3 had to find our own journey into faith. And I had to read and I had to study and I had to figure out this decision of, what is right for me and my children, and finding them the right dad and finding my future for them. And that was hard. That was a journey. And almost to the point that at some point you look at it, Todd, and you go, maybe faith isn't for me. You do ask yourself that question.
Yeah,
Because if
right.
that is the faith, if that's the only way it's defined, then where do I fit? I don't fit.
And I do believe a lot of people probably say, whoa, if that's
Yeah,
faith, that's not for me. And
unfortunately.
that is understandable,
Yeah,
right? Because that does look so fundamental or so judgmental
yeah,
and that kind of thing. It's interesting if I'm hearing what you're saying, through that journey, you became so much stronger and then developed a relationship with Jesus,
No.
almost a direct relationship on your own,
Yeah.
which is, I do believe, what faith is all about, and that it became very personalized in your own heart. It's funny when you talk about that, we're all sinners,
We're all
right?
sinners.
So what sense is there of judgment?
And how many times today are we going to? It doesn't, we are all sinners. That's the right way to say it.
Right,
And there's
right,
no
right,
gray code
right.
of sin, and there's no, and my children are, I am, you are, we all are.
Yeah.
But God
But
paid.
but it sounds like your journey actually led you to that relationship with Jesus, and a real
Yeah,
relationship with Jesus, almost kind of
yeah,
looking
where
at it
there's
openly.
there's space for all of that. And now it's hard for me to even imagine a day without starting my alone time with Christ and my alone time reading. But you're right, I had to find that. And there were years I wasn't sure that faith was for me because,
Yeah,
again, I knew faith as a definition that was different. And now it's different. I feel like my children know how much they are loved. I feel like, and I don't want to say my parents didn't express that to me, but the love of Christ was just a struggle for me to understand growing up. And now I feel like that's what I get. I understand the love of Christ. And I understand the peace he can bring you. Funny story, my three sons, my oldest is a pilot. My middle son just left for college this year, and he's a baseball player. He plays Division II baseball, and then I have a little one, and then I have all these bonus kids mixed in there, right? And I said to my middle son when he was getting ready to leave, and he would travel with me quite a bit for work. You get one that's kind of your personality, and he's my personality. And I said, we get one more day together. What do you want to do on this day? And he had been working on me, Todd, for probably 3 years for a tattoo. And I said, no, we're not doing it. No, no, no. So on this last day together, he said, Mom, I want to do it together. I want you to get yours, me to get mine. We're going to do a tattoo. And I thought, okay, we're going to do this. And he had just had a very difficult year. He blew his ACL, MCL, meniscus in a football game. He lost
I
his.
remember that. I think I saw that on
Oh, Todd, it
Facebook.
was terrible. When you're,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
sports are what you love and you lose your identity your senior year,
yeah,
thank goodness God still worked through. He's at a Christian university today. He was still recruited to play D2, even though he's injured. It has a happy ending, but he had a difficult senior year. So
sure.
he knew what he wanted. He had something that represented the journey. But when I started praying about it, what would I want? What would I want permanently on me? And I went with this saying of be still and know. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's also a cross.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Be still and know. And I'm claiming that promise from Psalms. It says, be still and know. When you can no longer hold your kids because they're leaving for college, he's holding them. When you cannot hold your marriage, he's got it. He's got your husband. He's got my parents, even though their health is struggling right now. He's got my day, my week, my month. Just be still and know. And that is hard, Todd, for my personality. I am type A. I am controlling. I want to move the chess pieces myself and plan the next move. But sometimes we cannot. And we just need to be still and know. And I think when I look at my faith today, that's what I've discovered, that there's love, there's space for who I am, and that he can bring me a peace that I can't find on my own. So I just need to be still.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. Carey, just hearing right now from heaven that you have been a trailblazer as a woman in software, then you're a trailblazer in franchising as a FSO, and now just sharing your heart and just being still. There's so many other women and men that are also type A and trying to drive and control their own lives, and be still and know that God is there and God will take the wheel, God will take charge. We don't have to try to control it all. You're going to be a trailblazer in faith here yet, and that may have been your original calling from dad and mom,
In the first
the
place.
pastoral calling. But I think so many are going to be blessed by your testimony. I can just feel it in my spirit. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you.
well, thank you.
To
Thank you
start
so
close
much.
on a funny note, I have this poster I like to keep up when I was talking about those days that I lost with my kids and how you just want to be everything. And there's this one that I keep over here on this monitor. It says, society asks a mother to raise her children as if she had no job, to work as if she had no children, and to look like a woman who has no children and no job.
That's right.
And there's so much pressure
It
on
is.
all of us, but I think especially on women. So you're right. That's why I claim that promise from Psalms that
And
it's
it's so
time
good just
to
to be still and know
be still. Just
God's got this.
yeah,
God's
yeah.
got this. Well, Carey Gille, thank you. Thanks for being on FranFaith today, and thanks for being my friend.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you.
Todd. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care.